Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the podcast. Today is Tuesday, August 12th, 2025. I'm Dr. Brad Reedy, and tonight I'm going to be talking about guilt, resentment, and boundaries. To me, that really is the formula that we're considering when we're thinking about boundaries in our lives is, are we going to face the guilt from our programming, from the energy, the feelings that we get in our nervous system, or are we going to be saddled with the anger and the resentment that comes if we don't take care of our boundaries? So I'm going to talk about skills. I'm going to kind of save that to the end of the broadcast, but I'm going to talk about the principles, the wisdom, the tools, and the tasks that are involved in setting our boundaries and what gets in the way of that. Before I get into all of that, let me go with our housekeeping items. My two books, The Journey of the Heroic Parent and The Audacity to Be You, are available on Amazon and Audible. If you are looking for a springboard into your work or a therapy accelerator, Finding You is that option. Our Finding You flagship program for individuals. The next available option is September 3rd. We have an online option in September 19th through 21st. That's about a third of the time. That's about half of the time and a third of the cost, and you don't have to travel. October 1st, November 5th, December 3rd. It's always a Wednesday afternoon, evening till a Sunday afternoon. So you can leave home on Wednesday and be back on Sunday evening in most places in the United States. If you're looking for a coach or a therapist who espouses the kind of work that I talk about and teach here, you can contact us by our email address at info@findingyouprograms.com or go to our website. For all inquiries, for private intensives, for couples, individuals, and families, go to our website or use that email. I'm so excited to be hosting a workshop at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York this fall. October 12th through 17th, I'll be hosting that with my daughter, Emma. And if you are interested in attending, it's a really great option in a beautiful location, an outdoor retreat center. That option is for about $500 for 5 days, 4.5 days. So it's an incredible value. Very different than the intensives. It's kind of a mix and a hybrid from lecturing, discussions, and also some of the experiential activities that we talk about. If you're interested, go to the Omega website at eomega.org. That's eomega.org. Click on the workshops tab and then the Audacity to Be You workshop. And it is official. As of today, we have launched our Finding You Inner Circle. This is a subscription and a support of the Finding You podcast. You have access to all the live broadcasts, and also, as well, you have a couple of private episodes each month that will only be available for the Inner Circle. Finding You alumni will automatically be enrolled in this. Again, if you're interested, you can go to our website. There's now a link there, or you can always email us at info@findingyouprograms.com. I'm very excited about that. And as of next week, if you're not a Finding You alumni, that is since October of 2024, or if you are not a subscriber, you will not get the invite for these live broadcasts. That will just go to those folks. So get ready for that. All right. When I talk about anything that I teach, in fact, I was just having this discussion with another clinician this morning. Really, people really want to be given advice. They want to be told what to do. They imagine that somehow, if they are told what to do, especially by an expert, that direction will resolve or absolve them of any of the guilt or the shame or the fear that they might feel. But of course, I can't do that. Not in good faith. I can't give advice to my clients, to anybody for that matter. What I can do is help you to think about it, help you to understand, again, what are the tasks involved in the question that you're considering? What haven't you considered? How do you need to what, maybe there's some thoughts that you need to challenge. Maybe there's some feelings that are coming up in the way. And that's what we really do in psychotherapy, even through these broadcasts. I try to get you into the kind of thinking that goes into making the decision. The decision is ultimately yours. And one of my favorite examples of what I'm talking about is illustrated in a question that I received one time when somebody said, after giving a lecture on codependency, which is essentially about attachment. Codependency is the pop psychology word for an insecure attachment. So I was teaching about codependency, and of course, whenever you're talking about codependency or attachment, you're going to be talking about boundaries. And at one point, a psychologist raised her hand in the audience and asked me the question. So if I hear you correctly, you're advising us to tell the clients that we work with, the parents that we work with, that they need to kick their children out of the house if they're abusing drugs. And of course, in hearing that question, I was very concerned that I had perhaps misspoke or been misunderstood. And I said, If I communicated that, I'm very sorry. And I followed it up with, I would never tell someone what to do, especially in a situation where the stakes are as high as they are in the scenario that you're painting for me when somebody's addicted to drugs. What I would do is help them over time to heal, to repair their codependency, to develop an earned attachment, which is what we call it when it doesn't happen in childhood. Help someone develop a secure attachment in adulthood, an earned attachment. Then they would make the decision that was right for them. Very similar in Codependence Anonymous or Al-Anon. You don't go there for advice. In fact, one of the traditions that they practice in those 12-step groups is no crosstalk, which means that people come up and share, but you don't talk to each other or interrupt or comment on somebody else's share during the group, during the meeting. But in listening and understanding what people are going through and sharing, you begin to understand, again, how to think about the situation, how to think about your own past, your own history, your own programming. Somebody recently used this example, which I absolutely love, in describing what happens in long-term psychotherapy, that eventually you begin to trust the instrumentation like a pilot would trust the instrumentation in a flight situation. Because at times, your eyes can deceive you. At times, there might be clouds, there might be some disorientation. And so, what you see visually from an airplane window, as I understand it, might not be reliable. So, you try to compare that with what the instruments are telling you or showing you. And in a way, psychotherapy or psychoeducation or recovery work with boundaries and codependency is teaching you that you're going to have to fly by instrumentation. I like to talk about it as overriding with new software, the old hardware, the old programming. And that takes, as those examples might suggest, that takes a significant amount of time and practice. So many people, I think, including me, starting with me, go to therapy in the hopes that the therapist will offer some hack, some trick, some pathway where everybody will get what they want. Well, I'll get my needs met, and my wife and my children and the people that I care about in my circle will get their needs met. And of course, there are very few equations, very few situations where that applies. If that were the case, if we had these hacks where everybody would be happy, it would be a win-win-win-win-win, then we would give those away. We probably wouldn't even have the profession of a psychotherapist. But the fact of the matter is that there are so many situations on a daily basis where some price is going to be paid. There's going to be some loss, some grief, something sacrificed. If you set a difficult boundary or share a difficult truth with somebody that's close to you, you might get pushback. You might get rejection, judgment, abandonment. You can get any kind of negative input from them from doing that. And of course, consequently, or on the other side of the equation, if you don't set a boundary, if you don't express that important truth, then you've abandoned yourself, and you end up feeling lifeless and used and resentful and angry and unhappy and discontent. So people come to me with the question. Often, they think that they are confused. And in a way, I suppose they could be confused because they haven't yet accepted the idea that this is not a situation that everybody's going to get what they want, where everybody's going to win, where they can win, come out on top, come out as the good guy or the good person. But the fact of the matter is, you have to learn how to lose. You have to learn how to sacrifice. You have to learn what's the most important thing to you. I can't tell it to you. I don't think any therapist can or ought to, but we can help support you in making the decision. I had a client this week that was considering two decisions, both equally advantageous to them in different ways, and both equally unfortunately, both of them contain sacrifices. And as we were talking through the decision, I said, as we talk through this, if you came to me next week or tomorrow and said you had made decision A, my response would be, I support you. And if you come back to me at the same time and say, instead, that you choose decision B, I would support you. It's why I always get interested when people say, quoting me, Dr. Reedy would tell you to do X or to tell you to do Y. And very rarely, if you've listened to the thousands of hours that I've lectured here, you know that I don't say that. First and foremost, let's get to the base, to the foundation of why boundaries are so difficult to understand, to talk about, to integrate. First and foremost, we are built as Homo sapiens to feel the energy, to recognize energy from others' people's nervous system. Some of us have incredibly sensitive nervous systems, some of us less so. But by and large, that is what makes us human, is that ability to read other people, that ability to bond, that ability for connection, that drive for connection, for belonging. So we are built to feel, to feed off the energy, the nervous systems of others. Ideally, if we had parents that were calm, who took responsibility for their own anxiety, right? It's the disowned anxiety of the parent that is the greatest cost for the child. By disowned, I mean there's a big difference between a parent saying, I'm anxious, I'm overwhelmed, I'm feeling insecure or inadequate, I don't know what to do. And the parent says, I'm fine, you are the problem. You're being too needy, you're being too sensitive, you're reacting too much. You're too big, you're too small, you're too tall, you're too short. That's the disowned anxiety. It's not I feel this way, it's you are the problem. Okay? So we have this ability to read off people's nervous system. If we have a calm parent who owns their anxiety and is able to self-regulate adequately, then we borrow that regulation from them. And we develop a sense and a base inside of ourselves where we feel okay, not terrified, able ourselves to take responsibility for our own feelings, our own anxiety, our own anger, our own fear, not putting it on other people, right? As Jung says, it's the unlived life of the parent that is the greatest burden for a child to carry. This is in part what he's referring to. If the parent doesn't take responsibility for their own serenity, as we learn in Codependence Anonymous and Al-Anon, if the person doesn't learn to take responsibility for their own serenity, they will inevitably leak that onto other people, specifically the children, and make the others around them, specifically the children, responsible for their well-being, for their serenity, for their peace of mind. We might be, of course, we're born with different levels of sensitivity in our nervous system, but there's also the socialization process. So many of us were taught by our parents that it was our fault that they were upset, that they were sad, that they were even proud of us or happy with us. We were taught explicitly and implicitly, but even what's amazing is we were taught it explicitly that if our parents were upset, we were doing something wrong. If they were scared, angry, disappointed, frustrated, hurt, sad, we were told often that that was our responsibility. It's the way we were behaving. It's the poor grades in school. It's the fact that we got in trouble for shoplifting, got caught shoplifting. It might be substance use. It might be anger outbursts. It might be that we're too emotional. And the parent tells us, if you can just get into a shape that I can more easily manage, then I will feel okay. It's your responsibility. When I was a new parent, I literally thought, based on everything I had learned in therapy up to that point, I thought I will just state very clearly to my son, my first child, how I'm feeling calmly, clearly, articulately. I might even couch it in an I feel statement. But what I believed was that was his North Star. That would be his indication about whether or not he was on track or not, or off track. I really believed that. In fact, I think my experience shows me that that's the most common mistake that parents make in parenting. That they believe that their feelings are their children's responsibility. The funny thing is that children claim make that same argument with their parents, and the parents, of course, refute it out of hand. But in a sense, if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. If the child is making you upset, making you scared, then you're making them upset and scared and angry. So we are sensitive at different levels. We each come with a different nervous system. And then we are conditioned, we are taught explicitly and through patterns of interaction. This is essentially what we talk about when we think about when we talk about differentiation and individuation in psychology. In families where everybody's responsible for everybody's feelings, that's the language, that's the interaction. Those are the cyclical interactions show that, suggest that, teach that. It's very difficult for people in those families, those type of systems, to go out and find happiness, to find love and connection, to find healthy intimacy in relationships. Because if everybody's responsible for everybody's feelings, it's just chaos. It's just reactivity. It's guilt. It's shame. It's punishment. It's threat. It's debate. It's argument. Who's right? Who's wrong? So we come with sensitivities. We are conditioned in a certain way. And we often conclude from the experience, from the teachings of our parents, that we are responsible for other people's feelings. And then parents have the gall to say to us, why are you so vulnerable to peer pressure? Why do you care what people think? When, of course, they have the same issue themselves. But the fact of the matter is, we were taught and conditioned by our parents first and foremost. They were the first peer pressure in our lives. And if you're like me, and I assume most of you are, you did it to your kids. I still do it to my children sometimes, implicitly. I don't make the mistake to teach it explicitly anymore, but implicitly, I communicate it to my wife and to my children when I'm feeling overwhelmed and dysregulated. Second, we are taught that self-care is selfish, but this is simply not true. Self-care is the foundation that allows us to love other people. We can, love is a giving thing, not a taking thing. I think one of the things that I found in psychology is that people often mistake love with needing. It's very different to say, I need you, versus saying, I love you. The behaviors are different. The energy flow is going a different direction. Love is a giving thing. Needing is a taking thing. And I'm not suggesting that needing is bad and loving is good. They're just both what they are. But it becomes a problem when we confuse them, when we think to need somebody is to love them. Love is a giving thing. It's having enough that I give to you without strings attached, without expectations, even for gratitude or appreciation. I give it to you freely. And needing is a taking thing. And all human beings need support, need help, need things from other people in the world, their parents first and foremost. But to confuse the two is to set the child up for failure, for a life of confusion in relationships. So we have to learn to take care of ourselves. But we have been told that it is wrong, that it's despicable, disgusting, selfish. Because what does self-care often do? It leaves the other person out. If I'm feeling too overwhelmed or too tired to listen to you, I am, in essence, behaviorally speaking, abandoning you in that moment, in your moment of need, because I'm too tired, I'm too exhausted, I'm not regular, whatever it is, whatever the reason is that I set the boundary. That's why psychotherapy is not self-indulgent. It's the greatest gift that we can give in so many ways to the people that we care about the most. We go and get fed so we have more to give other people. So first, we're taught that self-care is selfish, and this is not true. And in essence, when we lack empathy or the ability to give, to support, to show compassion, non-judgment, patience, it's because we haven't demonstrated a healthy amount of self-love. We haven't fed ourselves. We haven't put ourselves as the priority because we were told that that was bad. So when we live according to the idea that self-care is selfish, we experience resentment and anger because the method we have been taught about finding happiness, peace, and joy is not working. We expect that if we are selfless, that it will come back to us. There are books, the movies about this, right? And in a metaphorical sense, it does come back. It is joyful to give love. But us codependents, which is all of us, by the way, us codependents, we mix that up. We think if I am generous with you, then you will be equally generous with me. And everybody listening to my voice knows that it doesn't go that way often. We think to ourselves in our minds or out loud, we say, I wouldn't do that to you. That's not how I treated you, right? So if we live according to the idea that self-care is selfish, we experience resentment and anger because the method we have been taught about finding happiness, joy, connection, peace is not working. So people don't often treat us the way that they treat them. We don't get the reciprocity that we want. We get angry. We hold judgments for others' selfishness, both because they are not reciprocating and because more energy is going out than coming in. So much of mental health on a daily basis is energy out and energy in. The reason I want everybody to go to therapy is not because you're fundamentally uniquely sick, but because it's a place that's just for you. I want you to go get more support. And if you have somebody in your life that's struggling with mental health or addiction issues, you need more support. But again, we have been taught, most of us, that our needs are somehow a burden, that our needs are ugly, that to need is to be weak, to be a burden, to be something worthy to be cast off, to be ignored. So we've been taught to judge self-care. But sometimes when I say that, there'll be a lot of people saying, well, I don't judge it that way. A lot of people think that they don't. But the fact of the matter is, do you have conditions under which people are allowed to practice self-care? Do you say things like, well, that person was selfish? That wasn't self-care? And how are you to know? Who gets to decide? You don't. Not for them. They get to decide. And they're going to make mistakes. They're going to sometimes go too far or not go far enough. So we learn in our relationships. That's one of the things that I practice these days is that when the people that I love, that I care about, that I'm in a relationship, take care of themselves. They cancel meetings with me. They say they can't help. Whatever it is, they say no. I have that old reaction from my childhood. My therapist calls it the mother tongue. I have that old reaction where I feel resentful and angry. Sometimes I feel like, well, if they're going to take care of themselves, then I'm going to take care of myself, right? That's something that happens. And that's a healthy thing. They're not following the rules that other people's needs matter more than theirs. So why am I practicing that way? So we have to be aware of how much energy is going out versus how much is coming in. And lastly, on this point of selfishness and selflessness, we feel guilty about our needs being a burden and think that selflessness is a virtue. It is an American idea, something in the dominant culture and the zeitgeist that says selflessness is a virtue. But selflessness, even by the word selflessness, to have no self, to be not a self, to not matter, to have no needs. That is the foundation of resentment and anger and substance abuse and addiction and mental illness. Right? To be a self is to be a person. To be a self is to have feelings. To be a self is to have needs. To be a self isn't to be perfect, but it is to be human and to be part of the human condition. From the audacity to be you, I wrote, it is common to conflate love or loving too much with anxious attachment. Loving too much is a euphemism for the unhealed attachment wound and its expression in an anxious parent or person. The problem here is not loving too much. but rather not enough self. That's the problem. When I work with people that are struggling with what some would call loving too much, I tell them you've missed the whole point of this relationship. This relationship starts with you being a self, having needs, having boundaries, having preferences, one way or the other. And then finding other people where that works for both of you. Finding other people at the same or similar level of consciousness, ultimately. So part of it is developing, and it will look selfish. It will look backwards, right? People, we call it a midlife crisis. Brene Brown refers to it in hers as a midlife crisis. And she said, my therapist called it a spiritual awakening. It's the same thing. Sometimes people overcorrect, right? During the midlife crisis, that's what happens. It's okay to buy a motorcycle or quit your job and work on ceramics, but it's not okay to get divorced, some people say. It's not okay to quit your job, some people say. It's not okay to give up on certain relationships or friendships, maybe from your family of origin or from your larger circle. But again, we don't get to decide. Those judgments about others and about ourselves, that's what keeps us stuck. That's what keeps us confused in this equation. The reason I focus on the task of becoming self, that is, becoming who you are, is because that it is the foundation of healthy boundaries. It's the foundation that healthy boundaries are built upon. Setting boundaries to change others, to punish, to control, to teach, to manipulate, to guilt, to intimidate, etc., does not further our journey toward mental health and healthy relationships. Boundaries are principally about self-care. Boundaries aren't about changing others. However, people do change in relationship to my boundaries. I don't really spend a lot of time. My children have no stomach for me teaching anything at this point in my life. Haven't had much of it anyway, because I probably taught and talked too much, which wouldn't surprise most of you. But my boundaries have the lesson in them. The most important lesson, which is it's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to say no. No is a complete sentence. You don't have to justify yourself to anybody in this world. And I want you to learn that here with me. I want to model that for you. But most of us, of course, are constantly arguing about who's right and who's wrong, who's good and who's bad, who's justified and who's not justified. Because that is the world that we've been taught to live in, the good, bad, right, wrong, justified or not world. And that world is hell. That world is death. That world is a never-ending cycle of conflict where intimacy is never realized. We have to abandon that world altogether. All the things that we were taught about that have to be up for grabs. Setting boundaries to change others, to punish, to control, to teach, to manipulate, to guilt, to intimidate, does not further our journey toward mental health. When I talk about the skills versus the principles, one of the first principles that I love is that there are two doors out of the cell, the jail cell that you find yourself in, the prison that you find yourself in. The first door is anger. If I deny my needs, if I don't take care of myself, I'm going to feel angry and resentful. The second door is guilt. If I take care of myself, if I say no, if I set a boundary, I'm going to be saddled with guilt. So what are we to do about that? How do we cope with that? And the way that I understand it is anger is a signal from yourself, from your inner child, letting you know that something about that's happening is threatening, something is uncomfortable, something is not okay. And it's an important signal to listen to. Like Harriet Lerner taught in The Dancing of Anger, my personal favorite book on boundaries. Anger is a tool for change when it challenges us to be less of an expert on others and more of an expert on the self. Using one of the anecdotes from her book, she reports that the client said to her, "No matter how long I'm in therapy, I'm still going to feel guilty if I say no to my father. But if I keep saying yes, I'm going to feel angry. So if I'm going to change, I guess I'll just have to learn to live with some guilt for a while." Anger and guilt will toxify in our bodies, will cause disease, will cause really, really horrific behavior, hurtful, harmful behavior toward others or to ourselves, will cause addiction. Whereas guilt is a construct that comes from the culture or from our family of origin that we can deconstruct. We can learn that it is often a lie. Guilt will tell you to do the wrong thing, not the right thing. You will feel guilty for doing healthy, right things. Right? That's the dilemma. I feel guilty if I set a healthy boundary, and I feel angry and resentful if I don't in this relationship, and this relationship continues. So we listen to the anger and we deconstruct the guilt, and we realize that it is a lie. That guilt is not about our conscience. It's not about a moral North Star. Guilt does not indicate where we are behaving well, where we are behaving rightly, where we are behaving healthy, appropriate, or not. It is an unreliable source of feedback for us and comes from our programming and our nervous system. Boundaries can be evidence that we have a secure attachment, a sense of self. A secure attachment, is beyond the ideas of right and wrong. Like Rumi said, beyond right doing and wrongdoing. There's no judgment there. Boundaries just are. This is my boundary. No is a complete sentence. So I came up with these nuggets. I think there are 9 nuggets I came up with before I go into the skills. And here are the 9 nuggets. Nugget number 1, my favorite. You can't win. You can only choose how to lose. Practically every day, I think about this principle multiple times. Part of it is because I'm a psychotherapist and I'm doing therapy with people where the idea has merit, has value. But oftentimes it happens in my life with boundaries. When you're considering a boundary or a difficult decision, try this one on for size. You can't win. You can't come out on top. You can't come out the good guy, the good person, the good girl. You can't have both. You can't be good and healthy. You can just choose one or the other. You can't be a good person and have healthy boundaries. You can't be a good person in the sense that people won't think of you as good. People will accuse you of being bad and selfish, crazy. The less healthy, the less conscious they are, the more they will accuse you of these things. So adopting that idea, you cannot win, you can only choose how to lose, is a really valuable nugget to take into the work on boundaries. Nugget number 2, boundaries are not walls. They are doors that show the people that you care about how to stay connected to you. Often I will lead with that. That's a skill. Not just a nugget, that's a skill. I will lead with that when I'm setting a difficult or scary boundary with somebody that matters to me. I'll say, I'm afraid of doing this. First of all, I'll own the fear. And I'm doing this because I care, because it matters to me. Because if I don't do this, I won't be able to stay in a relationship with you. I'll be resentful and I'll pull away. Right? I have an avoidant attachment style. So you're just not going to see me. I'm going to sneak out the back door. So I say to them, I'm telling you this because I want to stay in relationship to you. And that can really soften things. That can really help the other person, put the other person at ease so that their nervous system is less triggered, feels less threatened. Because you're framing the boundary appropriately, of course. You're framing the boundary as an opportunity for connection down the line. Nugget number 3, healthy boundaries feel like abandonment, coldness, and a lack of love, to those who are conditioned to be enmeshed, undifferentiated. So you should expect for someone to accuse you of not caring when you set a boundary. You can expect somebody accusing you of coldness, of a lack of love, of rejection when you set a healthy boundary. That lets you know in those moments, and preparing for it, thinking about it ahead of time, lets you know in those moments, that's where their level of consciousness is. And you can have empathy. Because if you're like me, you were there before and you might even go back to there again. But to prepare yourself for that idea, healthy boundaries feel pathological to unhealthy people. Healthy boundaries feel cruel and inhumane and uncaring and unempathic to people who weren't taught them, who weren't modeled them. So that's something you can expect. Nugget number 4, cutoff, kind of that abandonment, that running away thing that I was just describing about myself with the avoid detachment. Cutoff is only stylistically different than enmeshment. Right? Enmeshment is too close, and cutoff is running at the first sight of conflict or anxiety. They only look different. It's just a different way of handling it. They are both a lack of individuation, a lack of ability to maintain connection under stress or duress or anxiety. So if somebody tends to pull away, to run away, to abandon, don't be fooled into thinking that somehow that is more advanced than the person that tends to glom on, to cling to hold tightly to. Both ends of that pendulum, if you will, that pendulum mark, both ends of them lack this middle path of separateness and connectedness, right? Freedom and belonging, right? That's what attachment is. I'm free to go, come and go as I like, and I feel connected to you. I feel like I'm a part of what we are together. Nugget number 5, similar to one of the other ones, prepare, and this is on borrowing from Harriet Lerner, prepare for change back messages. When you set a boundary with somebody, prepare for them to send messages that are guilting messages, shaming messages, threats of abandonment, threats of responding to you with consequences, insults, name calling, begging, pleading, arguing, debating, cutting off, abandoning, taking a victim stance, which is just another way of guilting, and many other ways. Prepare yourself. Watch for that. And it's not like you shut them down and you say, you can't do that, and you're insulting me and you're calling. You don't get to do that. You kind of have to be the bad one to be able to execute the boundary. You kind of have to accept that you are the evil one, the horrible one, right? When we talk about the fact that we have to come to terms, we have to face ourselves, this is what we mean. You have to face the parts of yourself that you have denied and split off and repressed, which are not unhealthy, but you were taught they were despicable, worthy of despising. You have to come to terms with yourself and accept yourself to be whole, to be healthy, and to set a boundary. You have to face the guilt and the shame and the threats to become who you are. Nugget number 6. Oftentimes people think that they are confused, and they are in a certain sense confused. I don't know what to do. But it's because they're using the wrong ideas to decide. They're using the wrong matrix. They're playing the game from the beginning. It's off. I have learned that often I'm just scared. I know what I want. I know what I need. But I want my cake and eat it too. I want to be able to set the boundary and to take care of myself and to do what I want. But I want you to love me. I want both, as crazy as that sounds. And as I have shared with some of you on these broadcasts in the past, when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I said to my therapist, I know how to make people fall in love with you. And she said, oh, you do? Please tell. And I said, you just deny your needs and take care of theirs. Take care of their needs and they'll love you. And she looked at me kind of confused with a quizzical look on her face. I thought she was playing a game. And she said, I think it's possible to take care of your own needs and be loved. And I looked at her incredulously and thought, are you joking? Like, what are you talking about? That's not real. You're not living in reality. That was about 30 years ago. And today I know she was telling the truth. You won't get everybody to like you, but you'll get the right people to like you. Like John Lennon said, if you tell the truth, you won't have many friends, but you'll have the right ones. That's what he meant. And because I didn't get out of childhood with a secure attachment, I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted everybody to love me. I thought that if everybody loved me and liked me, that eventually I would find that peace that my insecure avoidant attachment, that the hole that it left. But I ended up mistreating people and being mistreated all the way along until my work with my therapist started to build a base inside of me. It started to build this foundation where I'm okay. I learned that you don't need to be seen by everybody. You just need to be seen by somebody for a significant amount of time. And that experience of being seen, understood, loved, accepted as you are, that begins to build a sense in you that you're okay with people walking away if one of your closely important, closely held truths is unacceptable to them. You accept those consequences. And to be clear, we all have to make sacrifices in relationships, right? I have to make sacrifices in my marriage. You do. I have to make sacrifices as a father, even as a brother, a friend, a citizen, right? But the question is it too much? Is what I'm being asked too much? And only I get to decide that. Do I have enough left? And sometimes that means just in a given day, can I listen to my wife at the end of the day? Sometimes I can't. I honestly wish I could admit it more than I do, that I can't, because I really want to be good. I really want to be a good husband. I really want to be a good dad and a good friend. That's why I talk about this so much. And so I say yes to try to get that ribbon that I'm good. And then I end up feeling resentful and I end up not listening. I end up gaslighting. I end up dismissing their feelings or discounting their feelings. I end up thinking things like they're so selfish. They're so sensitive. They're overreacting. They're so mature. I end up feeling that anger and resentment because I'm not taking care of myself. But what I have learned is that the better that I take care of myself, I don't have any anger for I don't have any hate for anybody, that's for sure. And I don't have very much anger because it's okay. I'm okay. So often it's not about being confused, it's about being scared. Scared that we're going to be left alone, scared that we're going to be rejected, scared that we're going to be hated and not loved. Learning to figure out and discern what we're really feeling is an important nugget. Nugget number 7. Healthy people will understand and respect boundaries. Often, the most important boundaries you set will be with the people who mistreat you when you set a boundary. I think that makes sense, right? If you have something difficult to tell somebody, not from a place of anger and trying to hurt them, but from a place of honesty, of self-respect and respect for them. If you have something to tell somebody, a boundary to set, a truth to share, and they react with the kinds of things that I've been talking about today, that only demonstrates that you need to set the boundary with them even more. That they have no spaciousness for the other. And if that's the case, then it's really important that you set boundaries, because to be consumed, swallowed up by somebody else's lack of capacity is soul crushing. So when I go to a friend and say, hey, I don't like this, or I do like this, or I want this, or I do want this, or I say something to my wife, and if she freaks out or they freak out, it's a good indication to me that that boundary was probably overdue. That truth was overdue to be shared. Nugget number 8. A secure or an earned attachment, depending upon when it comes to you, a secure or an earned attachment is the foundation of boundaries. If you have unhealed abandonment trauma, you will prioritize proximity over peace. I shared this, in my book, The Journey of the Heroic Parent, because I fell in love with Wicked 20 years ago. And I love the song Defying Gravity, where she says, if this is love, it comes at much too high a cost. When the wizard was asking her to partner with him, to rule over everybody, and he was going to give her all kinds of power. He was going to give her his acceptance, which she longed for, which she thought she needed more than anything. And she finally broke free of his gravitational pull. She defied gravity and uttered the words as she launched into the powerful song, if this is love, it comes at much too high a cost. Nugget 9. The greatest secret in boundaries is that you must become the thing that you were taught to despise. Remember this. Before Siddhartha became the Buddha, the symbol of compassion, he left his family, which included his wife. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I'll try. Yasadhara. He left his wife, Yasadhara, and their son, Rahula. The Buddha that we associate with perfect compassion was selfish first. That pattern, that example is important to us. If you don't feed yourself, you have nothing to give. If you're spiritually, psychologically empty, you won't be capable of love or compassion or non-judgment. Conversely, if you take care of yourself adequately, you won't have need for judgment and hate, because you'll be okay. Now, here are the tools, the key, I call them the keys, but they're really the tools, because people want to know, what does it sound like? Learning to balance our compassion for our children's or our partner's pain while maintaining accountability is a critical feature in every relationship, in parenting and in the marriage relationship. Key number 1, boundaries are not for changing others, but derived from a parent or a person's sense of self, as in, this is what I feel good about. This is what I need in this situation. That's what it sounds like. This is what I need. This is what I feel good about. Key number 2, don't make it about being right, but rather about being a self, as in, I might be crazy, old-fashioned, or an idiot, but this is my boundary. That's the most powerful position that we can take, the most unassailable position that we can take. And it sets an example for our children and for our partners, for everybody around us in resisting peer pressure. Skill or key number 3. Similar to number 2, don't explain your decisions or boundaries to your children or to your partner in an effort. Don't explain your boundaries in an effort to get them to agree or be okay with your boundary. I'm guilty of that. Most people are. I want to convince you that my boundary is right, is solid. I want to convince you of what I'm teaching you today so that you're not mad at me, right? Don't explain yourself to try to convince the other people to be okay with your boundary. Don't say things like, I'm doing this for your own good, or I'm doing this because I love you. Accept their anger. That's the beauty about this sense of self, this boundary keeping, is that when you are boundaried in a sense of self, other people get to be themselves. They get to be angry. You don't have to gaslight them or talk them out of it. You let them be that way because you've settled it for yourself. Skill number 4, key number 4, listen to them. This is really important for parents. Listen to them as much as you're able and no more. As much as you are able and no more. Don't listen past what you can do because that makes you a good parent. You're in trouble then. Don't listen more than you're able to tolerate it without getting frustrated. The minute you start to get frustrated and dysregulated, that's a signal. That's that signal from your body telling you to take care of yourself. Respond with genuine empathy and allow them to be angry, to be hurt, to be upset with you and your decisions. As in, I get it. You're angry and upset and it makes sense. I'm sorry this is so hard. I'm sorry that, and I'm glad that you're telling me how you feel. Mostly it's just listening. Sometimes if you sound too much like a therapist, it's just annoying. Mostly it's just listening and being quiet and letting them be angry, sad, upset, frustrated, disappointed, hurt. See, to set healthy boundaries, we have to get good at dropping balls, at letting people down. We have to be good at failing. If we're not good at failing and letting people down and being a disappointment, boundaries are going to be really difficult, if not impossible. Key number 5, tool number 5, don't use your emotions to try to get others to change, specifically children and partners. When you're doing this, you're telling your child and your partner that your feelings are their responsibility. This leads them to think that what others think about them is theirs to manage. Don't say things like, I'm angry, scared, or hurt as a substitute for a boundary. It's okay to share your feelings. But if the intent, usually unconscious, if the intent of sharing a feeling is, I want you to make me not angry or not sad or not scared, you aren't just sharing a boundary, you're manipulating with boundaries. So ask yourself when you're sharing a boundary. And most often when you ask yourself, when you're sharing a boundary, especially with your children, why you're sharing it, you will realize that you're trying to change them. So those are the 5 keys. Lastly, after all of this, we can say we are sorry when we fail. Every parent has limits. Every partner has limits. And every child and every partner will discover the end of those limits. We can say we're sorry when we fall short of the ideal, which is often. And with this, our loved one learns perhaps the most important lesson of all from us, what it means to be human. It's easy to love yourself and the other, to abandon yourself against the threat of abandonment or rejection. We all struggle with it. Connection is the quintessential human characteristic. We seek connection. We need connection. So anything that threatens that at times will override our rational minds. Boundaries are the signposts along the way of the journey towards finding yourself and finding intimacy. If you're talking about connection, you're talking about boundaries. Because if there are no boundaries, it's not connection, it's fusion, it's enmeshment. It's not 2 separate people, it's 1 person. If you're upset, then I feel upset. If you're sad, I feel sad. If you're happy, I feel happy. That's not connection. That's not intimacy. That's oneness. That means that there's not even 2 whole people there. Lastly, I want to say this. Everybody struggles with boundaries. Everybody I've ever met. Every therapist you've ever listened to. Every therapist you've ever met with. Every therapist that's written a book. Every therapist that teaches about boundaries struggles with boundaries. In fact, the ones who are better at boundaries, they know that better than most. Perhaps the best program I've ever seen, maybe even above therapy, for boundaries is Al-Anon or Codependence Anonymous or Adult Children of Alcoholics. Those programs are so well designed to reinforce the ideas that I've been talking about tonight in a community where you get support and you learn from other people's successes and failures. All right, folks. That's it for boundaries. This version of the Boundaries podcast. My 2 books, as I mentioned, are on Amazon and Audible, The Journey of the Heroic Parent and The Audacity to Be You. If you want to go to a Finding You program to work on this stuff, in fact, there's only 1 spot left in our September Finding You workshop, September 3rd through 7th. There's only 1 spot left. We have an online version, September 19th. It is half the time and a third of the cost, and you don't have to travel. October 1st is the next intensive, Finding You intensive after that. Go to our website to look for more dates. If you want a coach or a therapist who is steeped in this work that I teach, contact us at our website or email us at info@findingyouprograms.com for all their inquiries, for private intensives, couples intensives, to make suggestions, questions for the podcast. email us at info@findingyouprograms.com. I'm going to be at the Omega Institute this fall, October 12th through 17th, a 5-day workshop called The Audacity to Be You. If you're interested, go to the Omega website at eomega.org, click on the workshops tab, and then click on the Audacity to Be You and sign up there. I will be talking next week on parts work. That's one of the most popular topics these days. I'll be borrowing a little bit from IFS, but I'll be talking about also model of parts work that comes before IFS was conceptualized. So parts work, August 19th, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. I look forward to that. I hope this is a helpful point of contact. I hope that this gives you some clarity and gives you some new ideas to think about. And as always, for and on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you, thanks for showing up to this and doing your work. It makes all the difference in the world. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.